Sir, you can start. Sir, you can start now.
Okay. Good evening, friends. I thank everyone for, especially Jalsa, for giving me an opportunity to share my understanding with you all on authority and a relationship without conflict. I'm going to talk about this theme for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll watch a video produced by Michael Mendiza. And the video would be for about 29-30 minutes, and then we can take question and answer session. So first of all, I would like to define both these words, namely authority and relationship, and then we shall go in detail about how they affect relationship. The root of the word authority is auctoritas. It's a Latin word which originated in English as authority. And in ancient Rome, auctoritas referred to the general level of prestige a person had in Roman society, and as a consequence, his clout, influence, and ability to rally support around his will. This is what authority means. And relationship, as we all know, is the state of being related or interrelated. So we'll take up authority first and then go to relationship and find out what are the causes of conflict and so on. So authority, as we all know, is a state of mind where we want to control, we want to dominate. A situation where we want to control or negate the presence of any person or others. This creates a sense of fear. Authority blocks seeing things as they are. Many times we ourselves create authority because we don't want to take decisions and be responsible for them. It is very convenient for many of us to obey others and to be told what needs to be done. So in any place where we have authority, it is obvious that we cannot have a relationship. Authority creates hierarchy, which is nothing but different layers of authority. Now I want to find out, why do we give so much importance to authority in our country? Perhaps it's part of our culture, our tradition. We have governmental authority, religious authority, political authority, authority of ideas, authority of having much more education, authority of a caste hierarchy, and so on. The way we behave towards authority, as we see often, it is very undignified. In government offices or even in schools, this whole pattern tends to get replicated. I think it is our responsibility to cultivate this in our schools right from the early years with the right attitude towards authority. And before that, I think we should discuss about it even at our homes with children. Now, this leads to my next question, the question of power, status, and functions. And what is its relation to authority? Why is power such an important, such a problem, or such a uh, problem in human relationship? Why does power so often express itself in extraordinarily ugly ways? When we are given power to do a job, say in a school or as a principal or director or in any government office, it is actually a function that we have to perform. We are given a range of abilities to do something. Power is granted to us basically to discharge a function, to do something depending on what our job is. It is basically given to us to do a job, to discharge a responsibility. But the moment we borrow it from our functions and appropriate it over our personal life, it becomes a status in our relationship. Obviously, we are misusing responsibility, and this is not right. This is quite wrong. We are changing it from function to status. How can we be more sensitive to this question of relationship, of function, and appropriation of this to our personal life when it becomes a status and its relation to authority? Unless we are extremely sensitive to this, we'll endlessly perpetuate this everywhere we work with, especially at home, in our schools, as administrators, as teachers, as parents, and children to take this cue from us and perpetuate it in their workplaces when they grow up and become adults. So we must be very, very careful in this. We must raise this question in our homes, in our schools, as it is of prime importance, and talk about it and learn about power, authority, and what it does to relationship. Authority has another connotation, the authority to question anybody, as we see in our daily life. In life, we must learn the art of questioning, not out of insolence or contradicting someone, but to explore, to inquire, to find out what has been said. This is the way society should grow, and it must begin from home. Learning about authority and power is important everywhere, but more important in home and in our schools. Now, I want to go to relationship. As we mentioned earlier, relationship is to relate. As we see our life, there cannot be a life without relationship. Whether we are living in the society, in a school, a college, or even we go to Himalayas and live in a cave, we are related to things around us. In any situation, wherever we are, when we interact with things around us, there is a response from our consciousness. So that response means that we are relating to things around us. Now we look at things around us in general, and we see that there are differences in the consciousness of human beings and plants and animals. Human beings can plan, we can imagine, and do so many things which is not there in plants and animals. We also see that there are differences and conflicts between one human being and the other. And we see that there is tremendous disorder in society, which is not there in plants and animals. The nature is very orderly. Krishna used to say that to live is to relate. He also said that to stand alone is to be related. Now, these are, one can call them Mahavakyas because they're so heavy, one can talk about them a great deal. But let's come back to our theme. The disorder that we see in society is basically a projection of the disorder that is there in our consciousness. We are the society, and society is no different than us. So the violence and the conflict which we see in society around us is the projection of the violence and the conflict in our consciousness, which is reflected in our relationship. We can understand the deeper causes of this by looking at it in our own life, within our own consciousness. What goes on out there is not different from what goes on within us, except in the scale of its manifestation. So I would like to discuss today whether it is possible to have relationship without conflict and what role authority has in our relationship. It is not important to find the answer to this question, and I don't intend to give an answer, or by reading books because this will only help in forming an opinion about whether it is possible or it is not possible. And as we know, any opinion is not the truth, it is only an idea. So it is important to explore that question with an open mind in our own daily life. And that is what I intend to do today. Let's ask ourselves, how conflict arises in our relationship, and also look again at what we mean by relationship. We have a relationship with the flowers in our garden because when I look at them, there is a response from within my consciousness. We have a relationship with the sky, with the mountains, with nature. Similarly, we have a relationship with people. We have a relationship with books, with my ideas, because when we relate with them, it creates a response from our consciousness. So I'm using this word relationship in that sense. When we use the word relationship in that sense, then we can say that life is a relationship. From the day we are born till the day we die, we are in relationship with everything around us. Let me begin by inquiring if there is a conflict in our relationship with nature. One finds that there is very little conflict in our relationship with nature. It is much easier to relate with our flowers and plants in our garden as well as in the neighbor's garden or with our pet than it is to relate with our neighbor because there is no ego in nature. But occasionally, when we want to do something, maybe go for a picnic and the weather turns bad and it rains and we are not able to go, then we do not like it. We do not like nature to interfere with our plans. And if we fall ill and we cannot go to work or whatever we had planned, then also we feel some sense of conflict. But it is relatively easy to accept this conflict because we accept natural happenings as something not inimical to us. Next, is there conflict in our relation with things around us and with ideas? If we get attached to things, we find that we have the fear of losing them. So we can perhaps say that fear produces conflict. And similarly, if we get attached to some ideas, a particular viewpoint, it could be political or religious or social or whatever, then we dislike people who have other ideas. We dislike books which mention other ideas, and that produces conflict. We find it very agreeable to be in a community which agrees with us rather than with people who are disagreeable. So that creates a certain amount of conflict in relationship. And if you want to do something in life and somebody comes and obstructs that, then we have conflict. And we feel violent because we want to remove them as they are coming in the way of our purpose. So we see how conflict arises in our relationship. And we ask ourselves, how can there be relationship without conflict? When one finds a situation in life where something seems impossible, when we feel that we have come to a point where we don't know what to do, then we must always ask ourselves if we are approaching that question wrongly. Are we approaching life wrongly? I think that is what one should ask. We should ask ourselves, are we approaching everything in life with a begging bowl, asking something for ourselves? You know, the beggar on the street is very honest. He says, I need money. He puts his pot in front of him and he says, if you can spare money, please give it. Give me. So we too must ask ourselves, are we also like that beggar on the street, carrying several invisible bowls with us and asking for something to be put in those bowls? There is one bowl which says, give me pleasure. There is another which says, give me appreciation. A third one says, give me money. And a fourth one which says, give me consolation. And whenever somebody puts something in that bowl, then we treat him as a friend. And when somebody takes away something out of that bowl, then I call him my enemy. So we see that so long as we approach life with all these bowls, we self create friends as supporters and enemies as opponents. And that is how the enmity takes place between two persons, two groups, two nations, because such an attitude divides people into friends and enemies. So, as long as we approach life in this way, conflict is inevitable. We may control its manifestation. We may see to it that it does not result in physical violence and war. We may control it, but it begins with this feeling of like and dislike, which we live with. So, if you really want to investigate whether there is a life in which there is no conflict, we must find out if it is possible not to live with any bound, not to approach anything with the intention of asking something for ourselves, which is perhaps freedom from desire. Do we know that state, even partially? In other words, I'm asking, do I approach another human being always because I need something from him? I want something from him, or is there true friendship in my relationship with other people? A true friend does not come to us because he wants something. He just wants to share the joys and sorrows of his life. In just sharing my life with another, there is no begging bowl. But if my relationship is based on mutual gratification, then it is not a relationship of friendship or of love. So we must ask ourselves, is it possible to approach everything like that? Can we relate with nature like that, respecting a tree and valuing our relationship with the tree, irrespective of whether it gives us fruit or not? Can we relate with rivers and mountains like that, without looking upon them as sources of maybe electricity or material profit? When we go to nature, do we go like a friend or do we go asking something for ourselves? And we find that sometimes we do go like a friend, but at times when we are tense, we go there in order to relax. We want peace. We want to forget our worries. In the same way, in our relationship, sometimes it is purely for sharing, but sometimes we cultivate that relationship to seek fulfillment for ourselves. And the same is true of our work, that sometimes we do something just for the joy of doing it. And at other times, we do it as a means to achieve something, to get something for ourselves. And when we do it just for the joy of it, we normally call it a hobby. And when we do it in order to get money, in order to get power and position and status and reputation and all that, then we call it ambition. That is usually associated with our work. We give tremendous importance to our work and we regard hobbies as incidental to be done in our spare time. So we need to ask ourselves seriously, why cannot all work also be like a hobby? So that work is not separated from joy. At present, we have set up society in such a way that we have separated work and joy. Most of us work for 5 or 6 days a week in order to get our salary, and then with that, we enjoy ourselves on the weekend. In fact, that is the way the whole world enjoys life. So the work in itself is not a joy. The joy is separated from the work. And we have accepted that as normal, natural in life, just as we have accepted the fact that we need to fulfill our desires through our relationship. We have a fear of being lonely, not to cope with that fear. We use the relationship to cover up that loneliness. And we have a fear of the future. And therefore, we collect property, we collect things, and we are attached to them in order to be secure in future. And we have a fear of being nobody because we feel that nobody will look after us, nobody will care for us if we don't have a position. That makes us aspire for position, for status, for power, so that we are somebody and people cannot ignore us. This is the conditioning in which our mind is trapped. And so long as this goes on, conflict is bound to come. So we have to find out if it is possible not to relate out of fear. There is a beautiful passage in the book The Prophet, written by Khalil Gibran. In the chapter on friendship, Mhm. He writes, let there be no purpose in friendship, save the deepening of the spirit. For love that seeks aught but the disclosure of its own mystery is not love, but a net that is cast forth, and only the unprofitable is caught. It's a beautiful passage. The prophet is saying that you may think that what you catch in this net is profitable, but you but that is an for us that is an illusion. What we catch is not profitable. Because so long as we are approaching life in that way, we would know what love is. Love is destroyed by the ego process. The ego process is the process of always seeking something for one's own benefit or profit. It exists because we think that is a profitable thing to live with the ego. So we have to discover if there is an energy which is not from ego, or we are always energized only by desire, by some profit, some gain. Sometimes we receive in return for it. So long as that motive is there, it is not a relationship of love. Krishna used to say that when there is no energy of ego and mind is able to see love, then that is the energy of love. So if you can answer the question why we love our wives, then we don't love her. But if we are really at a loss to answer that question, and we say, I don't know why I love my wife, I just love her, then perhaps it is love. But if we say, I love her because she is beautiful, because she cooks good food, because she looks after my children, because she is always available for me, and I'm tired, and when I'm tired and sick, then we use her for our comfort. Not that there should not be give and take in relationship. I'm not saying that at all. In all relationships, naturally there is a give and take. The question is whether the relationship is based entirely on give and take. Where it is based on that, then it is like a business relationship, a contract. And any relationship of love is not a contract. So we must watch ourselves in our approach to everything in life. If we are approaching everything with ego, then conflict is inevitable. And that includes my relationship with myself, because we are also the result of the past, a million years of biological past, which brings in the instincts inside us, thousands of years of cultural past, which brings in the cultural ideas within us, the psychological memories of experiences since childhood, which are also stored in our memory. All that exists within the brain, in the memory. That is what is known as me, and we cannot wish it away. It is something that exists. So we must ask ourselves, what is our relation with that, with this thing sitting in my brain called the memory? We cannot change it because it is the result of the past. Just as we cannot change our hand in the same way, we cannot change the memory in our brain. And our brain throws up a response from that memory. The question is, am I a slave to that response? Do I have to identify with it, or can I watch it and be free of it? Also, we must ask if there is conflict in my relationship with myself. When we look at that, we find that yes, there are some things we don't like about ourselves. We wish they were not there. And therefore, we have a conflict between what we are and what we wish to be. So we must also ask, can we approach this entity, which I call the me, also like a friend, not judging it, not suppressing it, not fighting with it, not saying it should be this way, it should not be this way, because otherwise conflict is bound to come. So the only way to eliminate conflict, both inwardly and outwardly, I feel, is to approach everything like a true friend. All those things have also come into existence in nature the same way as we come into existence. They exist, they have a lifetime, and they come to an end. Not only the living things, I mean, like plants and animals and human beings, but also the non living things, like mountains and stars. They may have a longer life, but they come into existence, they have a life, and then they die. So, is it that the mind makes this mistake of imagining that all the other things are there in order to fulfill us in some way, and therefore we don't look upon them simply as friends, as colleagues, as other fellow existing things with whom we share this life. Maybe that is the illusion in the mind. From where does this importance we give to this particular brain arise? Is it not just one of the brains of humanity, as Krishna used to say? So we have to understand our relationship with desire. Because if we don't understand our relationship with desire, then we approach life as if everything exists for fulfilling our desire. And that is the essence of the egoistic approach. So we must ask ourselves, what is my relationship with the desire that arises in my mind? And we find that there are two categories of desires. Those which may perhaps call wishes, which normally don't produce any conflict. Like I wish to go to a particular seminar or to a movie, I wish to meet my friend, or I wish to go for a walk, I wish to have some food. If that is not fulfilled, it doesn't create conflict. But when I insist on its fulfillment and I say it must be fulfilled, it becomes the mission of my life and I become like an addict. We get addicted to the fulfillment of our desire. We object to an addiction to alcohol and drugs and so on, but we don't object to such addictions. We all have the problem of addiction because addiction is not only addiction to drugs and to alcohol. All addiction makes us dependent. So we must find out if it is possible to have no addiction whatsoever. That means no compulsive needs, nothing that is essential, that must be there, without which we are miserable, we are not happy. So we must try and find out, is there happiness which is not dependent on circumstances? Because much of our effort is towards changing circumstances so that we will be happy, and we need to ask ourselves, does happiness really lie in the future? Or will I not be happy in the future for the same reason I'm not happy now? Because today is the future of the last 10 years. So if we say happiness lies in the future, then that future will become the present, and then there will be another future in which it will lie. So maybe it is an illusion to think that in the course of time we will become happy. We must find out if it is possible to be happy now, which means we are why are we dissatisfied with the circumstances, with what we have and we don't have now? Because if we are dissatisfied with what we have and we don't have that which we want now, then we'll be dissatisfied with what we have and we don't have maybe 10 years from now. And thus, there will be always a situation in which there are some things we have and some things that we don't have. So, psychologically, we are all in the same state, whether we are rich or we are poor. And happiness does not depend on how many things we have, but how we view the things we don't have. A man who doesn't want anything anymore is rich. And a man who is still seeking something more is not rich, he is poor. And so, as long as we are seeking something for ourselves and we are approaching life in that way, conflict is bound to come. It is inevitable. But wishes don't create conflict. It is when the ego gets attached to it that they turn into desire, into addictions, and addictions produce conflict. So I think we can all answer this question, can we have a life or can we have a relationship without conflict? So this is a very existential inquiry in which we have to find out if it is possible to live without a single desire. I'm not saying that there should be no desire per se, but can we be totally unattached to a desire? That whether it fulfills or it doesn't get fulfilled, it doesn't make a difference to us. Only then there can be a life and hence a relationship free from conflict. I think I'll stop
Thank,
here.
thank
And
you very much. Professor. Thank you very much for enlightening us.
thank you. Thank you.
Conflict does not appear like conflict. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'll just show a video. I'll share the screen. Let me try and see if I can do that. Can you see this? Can you see it?
Yeah, we are seeing.
You can
देख
see
रहे
it
हैं।
now? Okay. Okay.
अच्छी है, आवाज भी ठीक है और वो भी ठीक दिख रहा है.
Okay. So let's watch this video.
No problem.
So please, as the speaker puts into words, examine that which he says for yourself. Because doubt, skepticism is a great purifier. Most of us are so easily accept things, especially in religious matters, so-called spiritual matters. Please don't accept a thing what the speaker is saying, but try to find out for yourself by carefully listening if you are interested. If you don't treat this as an entertainment, then please listen, doubt, question, ask. You are doubting that which you have created yourself. You are doubting your own ideas, your own conclusions, your own experiences, your beliefs, your faiths. You are doubting so that you find out for yourself what is truth.
Part of Krishnaji's teaching, and he told all of us this, he said, you must not be dependent. You're all dependent. You've been dependent on me, and that mustn't be. And he put it to me straight between the eyes. He said, are you dependent on me? Meaning psychologically and emotionally. And I was able to reply, no, I'm not. In public, when he spoke, was an extraordinarily compelling figure. Without doing anything, he riveted the attention of a vast number of people and did it without just being in the way he spoke. He was an authority, which is not the kind of authority that one sees in other people. It was the authority of someone who's speaking about something that he sees very clearly at a great depth. And but his manner always was one of grace and tremendous dignity, which he wasn't even aware of.
Truth demands a free mind, a mind that is completely free. To doubt requires sensitivity. To doubt everything is, then this becomes rather stupid. But to doubt with light hand, with a quick mind, with subtlety, then the doubt brings about clarity, energy. And we need energy to go into all these problems.
On long motor trips, he described the whole hierarchy of what was believed by the TS and what he obviously was exposed to in his youth, his childhood. But as he said, he heard it all and it went like out. It went in one ear and out the other, although it was familiar to him. That leads me to talk about something that I feel is very important in one considers Krishnamurti's teachings, and that is that the child, as far as one could tell from his own descriptions, was what he called completely vacant. It was an emptiness of mind, which in a way seems to be a possible explanation of the source of his teachings. That he wasn't conditioned by where Westerners are normally. I mean, he knew how to behave and talk and all the things on an ordinary day level. But as far as what his teachings were about, there was no trace of any other influence in that. But he did know enough about the Buddha and the Buddha's teachings to have a great feeling for the Buddha. It's the only person he seemed to speak of with great respect and reverence.
Scientists, politicians, the educational people, the religious people, they are responsible, but I know nothing about it, I just follow. That's the general attitude, right through the book.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I make myself irresponsible. By delegating responsibility to you, I become irresponsible. Whereas now we are saying, nobody is responsible except you. Because you are the world, and the world is you. You have created this mess, you alone can bring about clarity. Therefore, you are totally, utterly, completely responsible, and nobody else. That means you have to be a light to yourself, not the light of a professor or an analyst or a psychologist or the light of Jesus or the light of the Buddha. You have to be a light to yourself in a world that is utterly becoming dark.
He gave what I feel is the most revolutionary teaching in the sense of what life is about and what human beings are about. And even Buddhism, which I know very little about, so I shouldn't make a comparison, I would say that there are similarities, but the similarities are, well, in particular, he did not want followers, he did not want disciples, he did not want any of that. And there was no systematized religion. Now, whether, again, my ignorance of Buddhism is endless, so that may have been all formed after the Buddha died. But I know the Buddhists today, we have the talks that are going to be booked now, not the talks, the discussions. that were held with Buddhists in England, Dr. Ahura in particular. And they, of course, in the discussion, say the Buddha says this, what you say this, what is the relationship? And he would, Krishnaji would say, never mind what the Buddha said. What do you think? You know, he was interested in the living thinking of someone like that. He wasn't for dogma. On the contrary, he was totally dismissed it.
That means you have to be responsible. Now, what does that word mean? It means really to respond totally, adequately to every challenge. You cannot possibly respond adequately if you are rooted in the past. Because the challenge is new. Otherwise, it's not a challenge. A crisis is new. Otherwise, it's not a crisis. There, that's why. So, responsibility means total commitment.
Total commitment.
Total commitment to the challenge. Responding adequately, completely to a crisis. That the word responsibility means that. To respond. I cannot respond completely if I'm frightened. Or I cannot respond completely if I'm seeking pleasure. I cannot respond totally if my action is routine, is repetitive, is traditional, is conditional. So to respond adequately to a challenge means the me, which is the past, must end.
The source was Krishnamurti himself. Now there are a whole lot of people who believe that there is some other something that he was in contact isn't the right word, but that had a meaning to him. I've never heard him show any sign of that. He would, for instance, he would not prepare talks, but there were certain conditions that made it possible for him to talk. Some of them were physical. Some of them were he would have a certain amount of rest and a certain amount of eating properly and watching his health. He took great care of his health simply in order to be able to live the life he led and travel and talk. Because he always said that the day that he can't do that physically, his life would end, and indeed that's what happened. And he was aware of that. And but he did not like to, he would not prepare a talk almost deliberately, in the sense that when he was in the speaking situation, he would speak, but not to plan it ahead of time. Many's the time I've driven him to the talk, and he would say in the car, I wonder what I'll talk about. And I never said a word in reply, but almost invariably, the talk that then took place was extraordinary. I mean, even more extraordinary than others.
Violence is not only physical, but great deal, much more psychological. When I conform to a pattern, when I'm being allowed to be programmed, when you tell me what I should do for the good of my soul or my psyche or whatever it is, and you become the authority. So when I accept authority, there is violence. Right? Psychological authority, of course. There is the authority of the computer, the authority of law, the authority of the policeman who say keep to the left or right. If you drive in Europe, you keep to the right. If you ride in England or here, which is it? Left. Yes, left. Left. No, right? Right. I'm driven lately. Yes, I've gone down to the left, walk up the right. That's right. So, violence must exist where, that part of it, where out of my confusion, disorder, I create authority. You understand? I'm confused. I'm disturbed. I want certainty. And you come along, the guru, the priest, the psychologist, the others, and they become the authority. I have created them out of my confusion, my disorder. So I realize as long as there is an authority subjectively, either the experience which I've had, the memory of that experience which becomes the authority follows, or the authority of somebody who says, I know all about it. The nasty, ugly girls who always coin money. They are one of the most rich people in the world. Your evangelists, churches, the tremendous organizations. They say, have faith, believe, accept. And I'm so frightened, I say this, and gullible, I accept it. So I'm creating out of my disorder a thought.
I can't explain it. I can't even describe it. It was as though there was a presence. I don't know. There was a kind of vibrance in the air. It was intangible, but somehow one felt something. Now, whether that was nothing or imagination, or was something that he felt and saw, that we felt to a lesser degree, I don't know. I can't. But it was happened a number of times. And I've talked to doctors about it, or one particular doctor in Switzerland who knew it well and who treated it there, and she said that what happened under the puppetry does not conform to any disease, any illness, any condition of the body. It isn't a medically explained fact, and yet these horrendous things happen. And the theory then was that there were entities who were operating on his brain, and it caused this excruciating pain. It's hard to read. It's so harrowing. And but I don't know. There was a great, enormous amount of mystery about Krishnaji, and I think
Sir, sound is not coming. Sound is not coming, sir.
Understanding and self-discovery. So they're mysterious, and I think mystery has a meaning. It makes a possibility that there are other states of consciousness, the states of, I don't like to use enlightenment as the term because that's so sort of a cliche, really. Who knows what enlightenment is? And if you do, as Krishnji himself said, if you say you're enlightened, you're sure the person isn't. And I think that's sensible. But there's a great deal of mystery about this.
You are second-hand people. Don't pretend you are not. You're second-hand, sloppy, shoddy people. And you are trying to find something that is original. What is the reality is original. It's not colored by all the priests in the world. It's original. Therefore, you must have an original mind, which means a free mind. Not an original picture, a new picture, a new this, that's all coming on. But a free mind. A free mind that can function in the field of knowledge. And a free mind that can look, observe, learn. How do you help another? Or is it not possible to be free? Yeah. Look, I never belonged to anything. I'm no church or no belief, no all that. A man who really wants to find out if there is eternal, the name is something beyond all thought, he must naturally set aside everything built up. The savior, the masters, the gurus, the knowledge, all that. Are there people to do that? Or will anybody undertake that journey? Or you say, well, you tell me all about it. What? I'll sit comfortably and then you tell me. Yes, that's what you are. I say, I won't describe that. I won't tell you a thing about it. That's to put it with words is to destroy it.
He would say, not just to me, but to those close to him, there's certain things that he could not talk about. He said, I'm not allowed to, which is a curious way of putting it. But he felt, I think we've discussed this, so it's well done, he felt very much that something else controlled his life. What that was, he did not describe. But he was, he would refer to it. Other things, something else decides what happens to me, he said, particularly with regard to his life, how long he would live. And more than that, he had a sense, also, I'm sure that this has been recorded by other people, of being protected by something. What it was, he did not divulge. The implication was that something, a powerful something, was in charge of his life. And but what that was, he did not describe.
So let us see, if you cannot be free, what are you frightened of? Frightened of authority, frightened of going wrong, but you are completely wrong the way you live. Completely stupid the way you are carrying on. There's no meaning. Keep, follow sir. Deny the spiritual authority. very, very kind. What are you frightened of? Going wrong spiritually? They are wrong, not you are wrong. Because you're just learning. They are the established in the unrighteous. And so why do you follow them? Why do you accept them? They are degenerate. And can you be free from all that? So that your mind, through meditation, through discussion, all the time, what it means to be free, what it means to wipe away all the things that people have put on you, so that you are innocent. Your mind is never hurt, is incapable of being hurt. That is what innocence means. And from that, let's take a journey from there. From this sense of negation of everything that thought is put together. Because thought is time. Thought is matter. And if you are living in the field of thought, there will be never freedom. Unless this is told, repeated, shown. They can talk endlessly about it. This comes first. Then you can read the books.
But he simply was clearly an extraordinary and very mysterious person. And didn't, the kind of judgments we all make about each other were not to be made about Krishnamurti. I felt, and that's not just the excess of admiration or devotion, he was of a different order of human beings. And it was somehow natural that he should be there. There was a very, very strong feeling for me and others too, that this was, there was something sacred about this man and his life and what he was doing. And it was palpable. I mean, being with him, there were times when you or I, in this case, sensed that he was rather far away, and not to intrude on that. He was showing the wholly wrong way that human beings have approached life and the understanding of life, and that is that he was giving a way of not echoing always the past. He said human beings live in the past. We all live in thought, the whole business about thought, which you know very well. Most people never live in the present at all. They either live in the past or they project the past into tomorrow and the next year and so forth. And to show that that is a false way of living, and not more than false, it's doesn't correspond to reality. He was trying to get people to see that the human brain needs to, through attention, he said, attention is the whole thing that will enable people to see the falseness of the way they're thinking. And every religion that I've ever heard of is full of tradition, and you must do what Shankara said, whenever it was, and you must do what St. Paul said, and so forth and so on. That is totally contrary to what the human being should be doing, which is to perceive reality, things as they are this moment.
So here we are now. So we can take comments or questions or whatever, any way you want.
Thank you, sir. Anybody who wanted to ask? Harshad Parekh, sir. Harshad
Or,
Parekh, sir.
or make a comment or whatever. Please.
Harshad Parekh, sir.
Okay. Okay, are you able to hear my voice?
Yeah, we are able to hear.
Okay. Thank you, Dubeyji. About authority, there is a functional authority like in schools and other organizations. And in Krishnamurti schools, also sometimes I feel that people who have a functional authority, they also feel that they know better about Krishnamurti's teaching. And sometimes somebody else who maybe understands better what Krishnamurti is saying, and such a person makes comments which disagrees with the functional authority, then it creates conflict in relationship. And that is what I found many times in schools, that there is an identification with function and teachings, and that creates problem. And when we live together at one place for a long time and we observe each other and we begin to make images about each other, and then we lose that sense of looking fresh. And then the relationship exists between the images. And so even I have seen that people who have functional authority, there may be 3-4 people, but even among them, there is not good relationship because they form images about each other, and Krishnamurti had to come and solve the problem and remove some people from the authority, functional authority, and it was creating a lot of problems even for Krishnaji. And about Khalil Gibran, he said that the work is worship. So when we do something out of real joy and it gives us energy, the work, then nothing really bothers. I feel that I retired at the age of 33 when I joined Krishnamurti schools, and it was my hobby. I always wanted to be a teacher, and I became a teacher, and then it was wonderful when you really enjoy what you do. At one time, when Krishnaji was giving a talk, one sentence came to my mind, that love and freedom, they are same. And out of that, responsibility comes. So the responsibility which comes out of love, which means freedom from the self, then we can really do some good work, whether it is in the school or in politics or social work. Without freedom, from the self, from the ego, there will always be conflict with people, with colleagues with whom we work. And about the desire, in case of desire, the person who has the desire and the person who wants to be free from the desire, they are same. That means the observer and the observed are same. So when there are desires, one cannot suppress it, one cannot control it, but one has to look at it. And to look at it, again, it requires the freedom to look exactly at what is happening within our mind without any judgment, without any choice. And that is what the teachings are. And in psychological matters, observer and the observed, they are not separate. And about authority, I think the way Krishna ji spoke with such a power, I felt that there was a kind of authority or authenticity in the way he was speaking with such a great emphasis. So maybe such kind of thing come spontaneously in Krishnamurti because he has some kind of clarity and freedom from the self. So the words are coming spontaneously in a proper way with a great power. And okay, and about the loneliness, and it seems that many people, when they work in the office or in the school, they are fine, more or less, though they may complain about the work. But when they retire, they don't know what to do with their time because they don't know, have not cultivated the ability to be alone and to be happy. So they feel lonely. And sometimes I have seen many people, old people, they don't know what to do and they feel very lonely. And so at a young age, one must learn to be alone, to look inward, to see things very clearly, and to be free. And aloneness is different than loneliness. So this aloneness is a great thing. It is a great treasure, and in which it is a very, very creative time when a person is alone, can observe everything very, very clearly, can express, can write poems. So this Krishnaji talked about aloneness and loneliness, that they are two quite different things. Okay, I have finished. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody more wanted to comment or ask question?
Harish, you unmute yourself.
Okay, Namaskar. First of all, Dubeyji was very, very exhaustive, very, very comprehensive, inclusive. All shades and nuances of the topic he has explored very well. I often felt that after every 3-4 sentences, there could be a discussion, and even then, that discussion may not be conclusive. So, and I'm sure would share my perception. So it was very good. Well, I want to share a couple of experiences. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, yes.
We are hearing you clearly.
Okay, yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, okay. I have been often asked, Harish, how come you could survive 5 years in Muscat, 5 years in Indonesia, a completely conventional school where there is a clear-cut authority and you could survive. But in KFI, except for your first few years when you worked with Upasniji, there was always a sense of conflict. Uh, I said, I don't need to answer because you have answered. How? You said there is a clear-cut authority in conventional schools. So they are not hypocrites. The conventional school, the principal or director, whoever it was, they were not hypocritical. They never claimed that there is no authority here. I can as well add my one experience at when I was joining Chinmaya International School in Coimbatore. The director asked me that female monk whom we called Somniamma. She said, Harish ji, you come from Krishnamurti background, and he says reject all organized religions, and we encourage that no, be a proud Hindu. I said, Amma, if I am not feeling proud enough, would you sack me? She said, no, 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 no. We cannot force you. We will not sack you, but you should do nothing which goes counter to what we are doing. As a certain that I assure. Of course, I did not last long. I was there only for 5 months. It's a different story, but I liked. They were very honest about it. So one thing is very important, which probably Dubeyji has not covered or might have missed it. Wherever there is authority, they should say, yes, it is functional and we can't help it. Like, but I suppose there are schools where there is a committee of 3 people, like in Sahyadri. I don't know whether 3 has become 5 or 3 has become 1 or 2. That I don't know. But, it's there. So they should say that yes, this is functional and we can't help it. Otherwise, Dr. Harshad Parekh said the same thing, that functional authority is there. The last thing, sometimes people may sound authoritative and they may not be. Just like whenever Krishnaji talks, he talks with tremendous sense of authority. That authority is clarity, that authority is his passion. Okay, so but some people may take as an authority, he is very authoritative in his rejection of all religions, all churches and masters or whatever it is. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Durgaji wants to say something. Durgaji, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everybody. Yes, sir. I hope it's okay if I don't switch on to that video and all. My video is not working very well. I'm audible, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, you are audible. Yes.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah, sir. It's a beautiful article, and I think it looks like the whole essence of your perceptions and all you brought, and you have you codified them so well, and it's lovely listening to the entire I think your talk. I think you have brought in so many intense subjects. They can be divided, and each can go on for hours and hours together. Like first of all, you started with the authority. I think this is a really serious problem. We do have to come across. We do come across every day in our day-to-day lives, and especially when you're working and when you're in an organization, in schools, or everywhere. So the authority of the bosses, authority of the colleagues, and first of all, how you can wade through, not getting affected by the authority of them and still carry on your own task, your own work. That itself is a challenge in its own way. So authority has so many angles, and some parents who are so authoritative by nature. So it reflects in so many ways. And I think mostly you have touched upon, like why, like, this the children, and especially in our households and in the schools. So why we should teach the children not to be subjugating to the authority, that's, I think it's a part of our conditioning, like the subjugation, subservience, somehow it's inherent in our societies, I feel. I think I don't know, the most of the households, they promote that way, I don't know. And then so much of psychophancy we see, in the society, going after the rich people, the politicians, mindless things, you see all this around. And not only that, any spiritual teachers, and you go there and procrastinate and do all that kind of thing. I don't know, this is very much deep rooted in our very conditioning in our system, I feel, sir. And just kindly allow me to say, like, on the contrary, if you see the Western civilization, Western countries, they are so highly individualistic by nature, and I feel at the expense of not even understanding and recognizing a difference between respect and reverence to following your own streak. I think they are in the other extreme, and we are in the other this extreme. I feel this is a very challenging topic in all. It has got so many aspects to it, so many angles to it. And I think you have touched upon the relationship with oneself, sir, the conflict and all. That's so beautifully you have said about the relationship with nature. And I think more than anything else, do we have a relationship with ourselves? How much we know about our own selves. Are we happy with ourselves? Are we at peace with ourselves? I think inherently you are mentioning that. So do we accept the way we are? It's not that what we want to be, or how we should be, but the way we are. Do we accept the way that we are? We may be having a lot of inadequacies. We may be having a lot of we may be not be having any of those qualities which we admire in others. But still, are we happy with ourselves and accept the way we are? I think somewhere Krishnaji is saying, be a light unto oneself. Ultimately, unless and until you have relationship with yourself, with your inner clarity and all, then you can't have relationship with anybody. I feel that's a very core and fundamental aspect of it. And you really have covered such a vast topics and so very well, sir. And I really appreciate and really, I feel that it's a very nice article, nice talk, we could hear today. And especially, and same is, Krishnaji's videos are also so wonderful, as usual. So that's all I want to communicate, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think about authority, I think Harshad Bhai mentioned it very well. I don't need to elaborate on it, but I would like to add that, you have to have a captain in a team. Otherwise, how will the players play a game? So somebody has to decide. The school has to have a principal. Otherwise, who will appoint teachers? Who will appoint other staff? But I remember reading somewhere where, Krishna was talking about talking to a teacher who was going to teach in a Krishnamurti school, and he said, "You are a new teacher. How are you going to convey that to the students? Why should they listen to you?" And he said, "No, I'll go and explain mathematics to them and all, and they'll listen to me." He said, "How do you make them see that they get interested in what you're talking about?" And he said, he was not able to say anything. So he said, "You have to establish a relationship with the child." And then the teacher said, "Sir, how do I do that?" And then Krishna said, "You have to get down from the pedestal." So that pedestal is the authority. When you become a teacher and convey something which you are not, the students are ready to find out. You have to be honest. You have to be truthful to the student. That is very important. And as Harshad Bhai mentioned, I think functional authority is a must in any society. Otherwise, how do we function? But this is also important, that how I take that authority. Is it authority to do a job, or it becomes my personal authority? I decide things and at my own will and do what I want. So there is a very thin line on this. And this is what I wanted to add. Then, sir, शक्ति जी, आप कुछ कहना चाहेंगे? We
हाँ
still
पता नहीं आवाज आएगी कि नहीं, आवाज आ रही है मेरी?
are बिल्कुल आ रही है.
All right.
We still have 2
बढ़िया
minutes.
आवाज
Yeah.
हाँ जी, yes. Just I wanted to say that because I have not listened to the talk, but authority, perhaps an aware mind would know pitfalls of the authority and would not misuse authority. And it seems that an unaware mind would tend to misuse authority. Thank you.
So authority basically is responsibility given to somebody to perform certain jobs. That is the way it should be looked at. It's not personal authority. There should be that separateness should be there.
Okay, may I say something?
Yes, please.
Everywhere where I worked in Krishnamurti schools, even in Brookwood Park, we see that people who are given the functional authority, they get attached to the position and then they don't like to be removed. And that was creating problems everywhere. That when there is no freedom in the way Krishnamurti is talking about, and a person is given a position, high position, then the person gets attached to the position and then it creates many problems. It creates fear also in many people in the schools that teachers are afraid to say anything against the functional authority when they feel that something is not right. Teachers are afraid. There is a fear. So this exists, though Krishnamurti talked about freedom from fear, images, but all this existed. And I was told that what exists in the world outside, the same exists in our schools. And I was told by one of the high authority in the foundation. So it is very easy to speak about relationship, fear, authority, but very difficult to be free and speak clearly. And of course, a person who has clarity, he must also speak in a proper way, gentle way, not trying to hurt other people out of ego that I know better. So sometimes it used to happen also in the schools. There were some young, immature teachers who were very, very deeply interested in Krishnamurti, but they used to become very emotional when they wanted to express their views. And then they felt that nothing is happening in this Krishnamurti schools, and they left with bitterness. And also some principals, also when they were removed, they left the school with bitterness. So very, very difficult to live the teachings every day and examine oneself when I get hurt, when somebody is making bad comments about me, then I have to look what is it, why I am getting hurt. Because I cannot stop other people from hurting me. But if I am awake, I can see whether the person who is saying is true or false. Then I will not get hurt and I will respond and I will say, sorry, what you are saying is not true. So that kind of clarity is necessary to function in any organization. And I have worked in other places also. where there was authority, and I was very young, but I was not afraid. I would tell even the head of the department what I felt, and sometimes they used to feel bad, but I had no desire to hurt anybody. So, okay, I finish.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Harshad. I think I'll make the last comment. There is some in the chat box. I can see something written by Mr. Janardhan Murthy. Sir, I agree with you that the kind of authority we have been discussing about, where you just negate the presence of a person or you feel that you know all, that authority which certainly kills creativity. There is no denying this. This is a fact. But this can be discussed. That some authority to maintain order. What do you mean by order? Of course, outside the world, in the outside world, to control the manifestations of disorder, we have to have some authority, like the authority of a policeman. The traffic constable has to be there to maintain the traffic. Similarly, there is judicial system and administration and all that. That's okay. But in a smaller community, let's say start with home. If a father or the parents are authoritative and they just don't care to listen to the children, what kind of home are we going to create? So can at that stage, which is in our hand, can we be more consultative? It doesn't mean that I agree with everything that the child says. I still have to say that, well, this is not done. Like mother, Shakti ji had mentioned. A mother also hits a child. It doesn't mean that she doesn't love him. But that is part of love. You care so much that you are worried about its welfare and so on, so you do that. But the mother can also be awake the whole night if the child is sick. So that is part of love. But I think we have to distinguish. We need that authority in the outside world to maintain order because we have to control. Control is okay, but what Christy talks about freedom, control is not going to lead us to that state. That will come through understanding. So whether I have authority or not, I will always do the right thing. That is very important. That's the way it has to be looked at.
Yeah, well,
Thank you. Thank you.
you talked about love of the mother or the
Yes.
child.
Yes.
I like to ask whether it is love or attachment, because generally it is not love. Because in that there are many things, other feelings are involved, which are not desirable. So even Krishnaji said that even if parents really love their children, we will not have wars. So love is a very, very, it's not very easy to have that. It's very rare. It's very rare.
I agree with you. It's a very thin line between love and attachment.
Shakti ji wanted to say something. Shakti ji wanted to say something.
Yes, yes.
Let
Let me finish my comment, then I'll request Shakti ji to say something.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is it's a very thin line. There is a very subtle difference between love and attachment. And one really can't say, because when we love our children, we also have something in our mind that, maybe when I get old, he'll take care of me and so on. So the love that Krishnaji talks about, he says that love has no cause. That kind of love, I don't know really. I can only read it, what Krishnaji talks about. But to have that sense of love, very, very, something that one can, just look into it, observe it. Shakti ji, please go ahead and say whatever you want to say.
This should be the last comment.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you see, just Harshad ji, because he talked about mother's love and attachment. For that, I want to say something. Reading Krishnamurti, it's very difficult to say what is love, you see, because we all get to know what is not love. But there is something which is called affection, and which one can be with, whenever it is possible. So mothers are usually full of affection, attached or no attached. Just that much I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, let me finish it now, sir.
Yeah. So we close now. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Dubeyji.
Thank you, Harshad.
Thank you very much, Dubeyji. Thanks to every participant. Kamlesh,
Thank you.
please close it.